What is up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sibling Rival-Read, the comic book club show that me and my sister do. I'm one of your hosts. It's Ben Pie. Here with
Oh,
me.
the other one. I still can't see you.
He's- Ah, Well, you might not get to see me.
Okay.
Oh, wait, there you
Oh, okay.
go. It's been a while. It's been 3 weeks since our last episode, 2 or 3 weeks, something like that. And the
Something
last
like
time we
that.
recorded, you were here in the same room with me. And
I
now,
know.
and now
You
you are
missed
not.
me.
Yeah, I do. It was nice having
That's
you
so
around.
nice. That's so
Um,
nice. Now you have a baby.
yes. um, that is the reason why there has not been an episode for a few weeks. I have been trying to get used to the rhythm of having a newborn in the house. And it seems that every moment that you get used to it, the very next day, a nice little curveball's thrown, and you have no idea what you're doing anymore. Just fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. Um, but yeah, so we are going to try to get back to doing this more regularly. There is a possibility that I will no longer be streaming the show, and that we will just be recording it and getting it out to um, people on YouTube and on their podcast services. So
Yeah.
I'll try to make sure that I kind of keep everyone up to date on what exactly I'm going to do with that. But yeah, so we're still going to continue doing the show. Um, it's just being able to pre-record on any given day might be a little bit easier for my schedule. Um, but I'll still have it planned to be released on YouTube and on podcast streaming services on New Comic Book Day, which is every Wednesday. So just keep an eye out for the show every Wednesday of every week. Um,
Again.
Again. So without further ado, this week's book is Rat Queens, Volume 1. Sass and Sorcery, as Anna mentioned, this was her pick for the week. She did the Independent for this month.
I wanted to make up for last time.
Yeah. And spoilers, this is significantly better than Fathom.
It is. It was not an origin story, which I was hoping for and expecting. So that was kind of sad.
Yeah, a little bit, but at the same time, I thought it was what I wanted it to be. Which was I looked at it and I'm like, oh my god, this looks like D&D. And then sure enough,
It was.
it was 100% D&D. And we did Critical Role a couple months ago as one of our books, and that is based on a D&D campaign. But as a comic, it didn't really like address the fact that it was D&D. Whereas Rat Queens, it legitimately every moment of the book, there was a subtle like, hey, this is D&D. Oh, surprise, your initiative is minus whatever, or you know,
Yeah.
armor class is XYZ, or I ran out of spell components, or I have no more spell slots available. And it was a lot of really really fun nods, and it identified itself as what it was, and that in and of itself made it very entertaining for
Yeah,
me.
I am really bummed also that because I wanted to then read the second volume, especially since I read this and then I didn't know when we were going to record. So it's like, I should just read the second volume. And the second volume is not free.
Nope. No, it is
So
not.
that was a bummer.
But I have to say I agree. I enjoyed the book enough um, to want to read more, and this is an ongoing series, so it's
Yeah, it's still.
which is awesome.
So was Fathom. Fathom was still ongoing, but yeah.
Yeah. But to my knowledge, the creator of Rat Queens is still around. I have some
Touche.
input on what's happening. Um, so why did you pick this one, Anna?
So you make fun of me all the time for going into comic book stores and like looking at the covers and judging them by the covers.
Uh-huh.
But that is exactly what I do. I take pictures of the random books that I think look interesting, and this was one of them. And so then I did more research on it and thought it sounded cool.
Yeah,
It's not like a super in depth reasoning, it just sounded cool. The characters looked cool. It was a strong female cast, which is fun.
yeah.
So yeah.
Um, definitely not a PG book.
No.
I would throw this if it weren't for all the F bombs, it would be a PG-13 book. But I would say this is a solid rated R.
Well, Comixology has it as like 17 and above.
Okay, so that would be rated R then.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was an enjoyable book. And the characters were definitely cool and interesting. And while you mentioned it wasn't really an origin story, I do feel like we did get a nice solid introduction to each of the Rat Queens.
Yeah.
Like just to get kind of a little bit of a hint of what their character
And that's
is
really
like.
all it was like a hint. It was barely scratching the surface of the characters that you
Uh,
know are going to be extremely layered, which is also why I was really bummed that the second volume was not free.
right. Um, but for being a volume one, I feel like it did its best to introduce you to a whole new world, and um, these four assholes, for for lack of a better word, because that's what they are. They are assholes, um,
Yeah.
and it's funny because I read this last night, um,
Yeah.
after my D&D session, and I'm going through and I'm reading this and I'm like, man, this is what my group would be like in this exact situation of let's figure out how we can possibly make the DM's life absolutely miserable.
Yeah.
Um, but it was good. I thought the characters were again, it already showed how layered the characters are, without going too overly in depth to where you're overloaded.
Mm-hmm.
Even at the beginning of the book here with the little like
Oh, those
uh
are some of my favorite, like the little info cards.
yeah, yeah, it's like little character like a little character sheet, but not really. Um,
Yeah. It's like a trading card.
yeah, exactly. Um, I am really interested to learn more about Dee, especially with the end of the book and uh, how it kind of ended up with her.
Yeah, and I mean the villain ends up being linked to her, not necessarily
Right.
directly, but
Hmm.
religiously
Exactly.
in some way, which is going to be really cool.
Um,
She's also the only one that we got to see a little bit of like a flashback for.
yeah, like of her family. We
Yeah,
saw a
and
little bit
like
with
all of the things that you hear about the characters and their family sounds super interesting.
right. And we did get a little taste of Violet as well, with her brother showing up.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, just a little bit here and there, and then you also got like a little bit of an idea of Betty's character, which Betty is adorable.
Betty is adorable. She's so happy
Yeah, um,
and drunk.
and drunk. And I just want her and what's her name to be happy together.
Violet?
Um,
Oh
not
no no no
Violet.
no no. The
Um,
the girlfriend.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, because I thought like their scenes together were super sweet.
And wholesome.
Yeah, and wholesome. Uh,
This is not a
100%.
wholesome picture.
No.
Cut to the
Um,
assassin on the screen.
but yeah, it was neat. I enjoyed this book, and it's hard to not compare the book to like other things that we've read, and this one addressed all of my concerns with Critical Role, um, and like kind of fixed it up. Like,
Yeah.
yes, there were scenes where there was a lot of dialogue, but it didn't feel like the dialogue was there to replace the
Action.
the artistic action
Yeah.
happening. um and
Like there was no lengthy monologue about a past. There was a flashback.
right, and it showed the flashback. It wasn't just a this is what happened in my past.
Mm-hmm.
So it addressed that, and it was awesome. I really enjoyed going through this book and really like knowing the nuances of D&D, being able to pick apart the ah this is a nice call out. Um,
Yeah. I've only played D&D once, but when Betty tried to sneak in and came across the assassin, I was like, "Aw, that was a natural one."
yep. Um, and I thought it was again, I thought it was a really a nice relatable book as far as D&D goes, because a lot of the time, yeah, people think that they're going in and playing D&D and being like the heroes and all of that, but at the same time it's role playing. You get to do whatever the hell you want. And half the time, especially in the beginning, you really just come across as a group of assholes. Which is fine. You play the game, you want to have fun. And this, I think, showed that at the same time as being like, oh, this is, this is a problem. Um, like the characters realizing this is a problem. Maybe we're too much of an asshole, but at the same time, they're still going to be themselves, kind of thing.
And seeing the other groups of what are they,
Mercenaries,
explorers? What?
mercenary groups.
Yeah. With like the four Daves.
Yeah, the four
It was
Daves were that
awesome.
was the guy who has like all of the birds in his beard.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was good stuff. Um,
Was very gory.
it was.
The
But
hand arm thing freaked me out. If it's a drawing, like regardless if it's a drawing, which it is a drawing, obviously being in a comic book, freaked me out.
I absolutely understand. That was with the that was like
Hannah
yeah.
and
I mean, here's
yeah, just
here's how gory it does get. Um,
it's completely like blood spattered
yep,
after getting hit over the head by like an ogre hammer.
yeah.
Yeah. Yum.
Um, but yeah, it was. I thought the character designs were just really cool too. Like there's not one where I'm like, oh man, they really didn't take their time on putting this character together. Oh, here's the arm.
Yeah.
This is what I was looking for.
And
Da-da.
the magic was super cool too.
Yeah, and
Well,
again,
especially with Hannah glowing pink eyes and then glowing black eyes when she got super angry.
uh huh. Oh yeah, here's the arm for you.
It's like
Am
snapped and it's dangling by like a single thread and it's just not pretty.
am
And
I
you
in
see the
shock?
bone and like
Yep.
bleh.
Yeah. It's this one was not afraid of this book is not afraid of doing anything.
Yeah.
And I kind of I commend it for that. um, so big.
Oh, and the eyeballs. I have a thing with eyeballs, and there's just eyeballs on like freaking knives, and I'm like, ugh.
Um, oh, and then this scene was easily one of my favorites, where Hannah is disguising herself as, I forget this guy's name. I'm sure it says it maybe on the previous page.
Like the captain or something.
Yeah, the captain of the guard person.
He was a cool character.
He was, and I'm really interested to learn more about him because obviously, like, there's stuff.
Like an interesting and dark history,
Yeah.
which I'm super excited to learn about, and like especially after reading about the little hints that they threw out there, like the assassin recognizing him, and then the end cap of the book. But at the same time, I'm like, man, they did that so fast.
Yeah, they really
And
did.
I already liked his character when you first saw him with his interactions with the rat queens. So I was like, I could do with like getting to gradually learn about him, but
Yeah,
totally understand and made me also want to really read the second volume.
yeah. But like this is exactly the kind of thing that would happen. This scene right here, where Hannah disguises herself as this guy.
Hmm.
This is like, again, it's just like it's D&D. Like, oh, I'm just gonna disguise myself as this person, and oh, this person's here too. Oops. Um. So I thought it was good. I really enjoyed a lot of those call outs and nods and all of that.
Hmm.
And I do agree with you. These little like um, in between chapter like art uh, was also really good. And I have to say the cover art has to have been done by the same artist. I didn't double check.
Yeah, they
Um,
do also remind me, like art style wise, similar to the Critical Role.
it does. It is similar. Um, I do agree with that. But it is nice and consistent that the covers are in line with the book inside as well.
Yeah,
It's not like I'm looking at the covers in between or any of that art and being like, "Oh, well, that's not what I'm getting to see."
yeah, it was
Um,
so hard. I couldn't pick a This one I really couldn't pick a favorite panel because all of the panels went really well telling the story, but none of them were like a standout panel for me personally, aside from those like cover arts
I do
and
agree.
like the little character cue cards.
Yep. I think there were a lot of really sweet moments that were shown really well.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't think there was like a panel that was like stand out. Every panel, like you said, had its place
Yeah,
in the story. There was nothing that was like crazy.
the
Um,
crazy came from, all the blood and the gore and the language.
right, which again is just that's D&D at its finest. Who doesn't love a
Yeah,
tea party covered in blood? That was cool, I
this
guess.
one was cool with the ink style. That one
Uh-huh.
was definitely an alternate cover like type of a thing, but
Yep.
and the attention to detail with all the tattoos on all the characters,
Yep.
also incredibly interesting.
Um, they did a really good job at making every character have a very unique look, which I think can be very difficult to kind of have that unique look and have it still be consistent across the whole book. Um,
Yeah.
this whole scene was something I did also find hilarious. The whoa, dude, floating naked lady. Hey, that doesn't even make sense. And then the other Dave comes in and murders them all. Uh,
Yep.
the Daves. The Daves.
That's staff design is also super
It
cool. It's
is.
like the Infinity Stones, but on a staff.
It really is. It's like instead of an infinity gauntlet, it's a infinity staff.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, this one's just going. Reality is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it was. All I can say is it was enjoyable. Um, I do wish there was a little more of a through line with this.
You don't get that until like the very, very end.
And you do start to see like how some of those things are connected. But even though it wasn't an origin story, because it was trying to introduce all the characters all at once, it took away from the through line itself.
Yeah.
I think in a perfect world, the story would have kind of, um, I would have been okay with them spreading out like the characters, like background introduction over more issues, just to be able to focus on the through line a little better.
I agree. And I mean, even if, yeah, no, I completely agree. Even if they just spent the first issue solely focusing on the Rat Queens, which I guess to a degree they did, but how they did it was through other characters too. So, like, you didn't get much of their dynamic. You had, like, the one little candy lunch,
Yep. Well, and
candy and cocaine lunch.
of course, um, I do think like introducing the Rat Queens the way that they did in how the world views them, I think
With the
was
gold and stuff was
yeah,
cool.
I thought that was a really important way of introducing them. I think in a perfect world, maybe they spend a little more time doing that in the first issue, and then kind of show a consistent through line, and then start
Introducing the other characters.
giving you like the tidbits of backstory here and there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, I can agree. Like, that's, I also think that's why I was, it's not that I didn't enjoy it from the very beginning, but I wasn't immersed in it from the very beginning.
yeah,
So at the end of it, I do want to read it and more and all this and that, but wasn't something that I sat down and was like, "Oh yeah, I could totally binge this."
yeah. It didn't start. It but I think that's going to be with any new book that we read, is it's going to take that minute to kind of like really get used to the water before being
Yeah,
able to
but I
dive
mean,
in.
I just more so mean how we talked about how it could have been improved in terms of introducing the characters a little bit
Yeah.
more gradually and the through line. It would have made it more interesting as a first time reader to be immersed in the story in that way, whereas how it is currently, I could have easily waited a week in between and it wouldn't have bothered me.
Yeah.
Which is also a good thing for like if you go to the comic book store every week and you enjoy that, this was a good one to be a guinea pig for.
Um yeah. But
I
again,
will.
I
Ooh, sorry.
think I would have I think the first issue would have gripped me enough to try to read through like the first arc.
Mhm.
Um just because of how D&D it is, you know?
That's fair.
Um and I loved the like this introduction here with the groups. I feel like that's all I really needed to have for all of them. I didn't need to see so much of them in the beginning.
I disagree with the Peaches group.
What about the Peaches group?
Hannah has like a huge tiff with this other group that you don't really understand, and then the next time you see them, half of them are dead.
That's true.
So I have zero compassion for them dying. I have no understanding on why the rat queens are like, yeah, okay, they stink, but let's help them. And I don't really understand the gravity of Hannah helping this other wizard that she obviously doesn't enjoy being around and
Uh-huh.
absolutely despises.
That's fair.
So I will say that like I get that for the Four Daves and the Brother Ponies, who you never saw again,
Yep.
and the Obsidian
Same with
Darkness.
Obsidian Darkness. They die like in the next
Yeah,
in the next 2 pages.
yeah. But I do think that that was a missed opportunity with the Peaches group.
Yeah. I'll agree with you there. Um, I think it might be like I think trying to again throw in that much might have been too much.
Mhm.
Um, and maybe we'll get like kind of a backstory with Hannah and the Peaches. Maybe Hannah was a peach.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I'm fine if they go back to it. It was more so just in that heavy moment. It didn't really hit me anyway, other than more action on the panels.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah.
I get it. I get it.
I did
Um,
have one beef with the art.
okay. This looks so freaking cool.
So, stupid assassin page. Um, I will say, like, I did enjoy the art. I enjoyed the background. I also understand doing quick thumbnail sketches for a huge comic type of a thing, or like an undertaking of a comic. You get those distance shots and their thumbnails, like in this page here, where you have the autumn leaves and everything, and they're the climbing the mountain. I
Uh-huh.
suppose the first one where you see the distance shot, it's
Yep.
thumbnail style,
Mm-hmm.
and that I understand, and that is fine. And I actually really enjoy the thumbnail style because I'm like, oh, thank God, not everyone's like spending 40 million years drawing, one panel. However, then they'll do like close-up shots later on in the comic, and you'll have people in the not even necessarily in the background so much, but just not in the focal area that are thumbnail sketches, which is different from when they do it as like a blurred background,
Mm-hmm.
where almost like you were focusing a camera lens and you just took a
Yeah,
very
you're just
focused
changing
image.
the depth of field kind of thing.
Yeah. So there was that, which was enjoyable and awesome, but then there was you focusing on this one character that's talking, and they have somebody right next to them. That was a thumbnail, like art style wise, which aggravated me because then it just looked like they didn't finish.
I can understand that. I think it does come back to like they had a lot of really really good like individual character designs
Mhm. And
that
this also only really happened in the first maybe two issues.
uh,
I didn't notice it again later on, so it could also be just getting used to the character designs or the time
mhm.
crunch and
Yeah,
the reality of writing and doing a comic.
exactly. Um this right here was one of my favorite scenes though, where they're at the Merchants Guild
Mm,
and uh Dee, is that her name?
D. I don't think it's
Dee.
Dee Dee. Maybe it's Dee Dee.
Where Dee is kind of like casing the place while um
Betty.
Betty. Wait, Betty's the smidgen. Dee is the
Betty's the
warlock.
small one.
Okay.
D is the one who's just faking it by
Yeah.
being there.
While Betty is like kind of sizing everything up. This whole thing kind of this combined with um the uh when they start talking about it at the pub,
Yeah.
it reminded me. Did you ever watch the show Psych?
Yeah.
It reminded me of Sean Spencer.
Yeah.
It's like she's just kind of like looking around the room, and it's showing all of the things that she's focusing on, and then later on in the book, the payoff comes where it's like, well, obviously he was doing X, Y, Z, and A, B, C, and D, E,
You
F,
can
and
get
it's
in
like,
there and da da da.
oh my
Yeah.
god, this this coked out smidgen is actually
Awesome.
yeah Um,
She was
so
probably my favorite in
of the
the
rat queens.
in this volume,
Hmm.
character wise.
Well, I feel like she had the most of her character really shown throughout the book,
Yeah, I
in a
agree.
humanizing way. Like obviously we saw quite a bit of stuff with Hannah as well, but not enough to like
Not enough to sympathize or relate to her.
exactly. Um,
Um, yeah.
and you got maybe a little bit of Violet with her brother, um, but
And
that
then you wanted
was
to freak out because then you thought you weren't going to see Violet anymore.
yeah. And then with that that was like just enough of a taste to be like, oh boy, I can't wait to see where her story goes as well. I think the
Her
only
comment about the beards was also super interesting.
yeah. Um, the only character that I felt like you didn't get um like a good like I want to know more about this character.
Like he
It
didn't get any base
yeah, is Hannah.
or foundation.
Um, which I was complaining that I felt like they went too much into each person, but I feel personally for me, and again, like obviously I haven't read the whole series. I'm not completely up to date on it, so there's probably I'm not saying there's not a reason that they did it this way, um, but for me, I think it would have been an all or nothing, an all or one kind of thing where
Hmm.
you either focus on one person's like character development a little bit at the beginning or you focus on everyone's but kind of like I don't know, I do not
Hmm.
understand why the group essentially puts up with Hannah.
Me neither. And he seems to be like the leader of the group. So you're like, you're supposed to like her. And I really don't right now.
Yeah, she's just kind of a bitch.
Yeah. And I was super interested in Dee's character just from reading like the little
Her
card
character
quote
design I think is the
thing.
coolest.
Her character design is super cool, and her backstory is really weird. And with like the cultist
Uh-huh.
squid demon god thing.
The warlock.
Um,
Got the perfect warlock.
and and yeah, you don't get to know like anything about her.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting that they also chose to highlight Betty the most.
I think I think it was
I
cool that
like
they
Betty.
yeah. I think they made Betty the most human character of them all. Like, she's just kind of trying to find her way of fitting in and she's kind of a little doe-eyed and trying to still see the best in the world kind of thing and
I think she was not so much the most human, but the most innocent. Because I
yeah,
mean,
okay.
based
That's what
on
I mean. You're right.
mannerisms and things like that, I felt the most human, or like the character that you would think you could probably relate to really easily would have been Violet, but you don't know enough yet.
Yeah, you know what? You're fair. You're right. And I that is what I meant more is that
Innocence.
she's more innocent. And I
Mhm.
loved this whole thing with old lady Bernadette and her just saying, "I'm I'm not old."
Yeah.
But that's how they introduce her every single time. Old lady
Yeah.
Bernadette. Um who seems to have the biggest beef with
With the Rat
the rat
Queens.
queens.
Well, she's broke because of them.
It's true.
Well, she was broke because of them.
Yeah. They've destroyed her storefront a few too many times, it sounded like.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, and I agree with the art. This is a panel that I did really like the one with Bernadette and the assassin right behind her.
Where he just looks like he's emerging from the
From
shadows.
yeah, the action of this book, just like the action, the movement, all of it, art wise, was really well done. I thought.
Yeah, I
Um,
also think that the fight scenes were really well
yeah,
done.
well, and
They
that's what
weren't
I'm.
abrupt, and you can totally follow what's happening, and that's what you mean?
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Like the action is easy to follow. There's a lot of like good movement and um the flow from panel to panel worked out really nicely in a lot of them. Again, like just looking at these fights with the the trolls and all of that, it's like you can easily follow what's happening here.
Yeah,
Like with no issue and not be confused at like who's doing what and all of that, and still get a fun idea of each character's kind of style.
yeah.
And
Their
like,
fight sequence showed character.
yeah, and like there are just like little nuances that happen here and there. Like she's using a wood shield here, and the axe is going like directly into it, which makes sense because it's wood and it's an axe. And then like as she's moving, she loses her um, headband and like
Mhm.
things like that, where it's like you see the movement, and like the stance changes with her blade and all of that, and you're just like, this is great. You're getting a lot of like character of how this person fights, um, and so on and so forth. It's fun. It's beautiful. Like again, the movement is just so incredibly well done.
Yeah,
Um, and it's like the moments where you can't see their faces, um, in some of these shots, I think, especially when it's in relation to Hannah, I thought made her just seem that much scarier.
yeah. And I mean, the only redeeming, I don't want to say redeeming, because I mean, she hasn't needed redemption from the audience. She hasn't done anything. She's just not a very like relatable character. But Hannah, the only moment where you're like, oh, okay, she could be a really cool character was when her eyes go black and she's like, someone messed with Violet.
Yep.
Which also doesn't happen
Um,
like the very end.
and then I loved a lot of these these little these little like silly things. Like, did someone call the four Daves? Nope. Shut up, Gary.
Yeah, with Gary, and Gary's the reason that they all knew where to find the rat queens and everything, and they're just like,
Exactly.
uncool Gary.
Yep. Next issue. Shut the F up, Gary. +5 on all attack rolls against dudes named Gary. I loved it. There was a lot of really well done, well placed humor throughout the book, and yeah,
I hope to continue reading.
I do too. I do too. Um, yeah, there was really it was fun, and this was just, oh my gosh. This is that scene that you were talking about, and it's like watching the arrow just go like directly through. Like, imagine if this were a 3D movie. That would have been perfect.
Oh,
and then here's your
the
white
white eyes
to.
to the black.
Yep.
Even just the magic around it, going from kind of beams of light into this oozing shadow,
Uh
really well
huh.
done.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um. Ah, gosh. Yeah. I like it. I definitely want to read more. This is definitely a book that I want to continue with. Um, but
Same.
yeah,
Same.
I think you redeemed yourself.
That's so good.
after Fathom. Um,
I mean, in my defense, this one looked cooler too. Fathom just sounded like it had really awesome reviews.
yes. Um,
Sorry,
no,
you said.
I agree. I think I think all in all, this one sounded like a much cooler book.
Yeah.
Um, so
Are you-
we talk about ratings then.
Yeah, but you start with story.
Yep. So story wise, I kind of mentioned my complaints. There I would have liked a more solid through line. Other than like the Rat Queens are awful people. And them trying to kind of redeem themselves for being awful people. Um,
Yeah.
I,
Violet also seemed like she wanted to be the hero of the story, which was interesting.
what's that?
Violet also seemed like she wanted to be like the hero of the story.
Especially after meeting up with her brother.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but all in all, I think the introduction of everything was pretty well done. I thought the characters were gripping enough. Um, and with how interesting the characters that they've given us information on so far are, I can't imagine that they're going to really do Hannah dirty in the future of the book. I
Yeah.
just think it didn't come out in this first volume. Um, so for me, I would give Rat Queen's story. I would give it an 8 out of 10. It was really, really enjoyable. Um, it wasn't quite an origin, and it wasn't quite a regular through line.
Hmm.
Um, and I think I would have liked it to have picked one. And
Yeah.
that's where it fell short for me the most, in my opinion.
I agree with I agree with all of that. For me, I love origin stories. I do think that it was fine, obviously, that it's not going to be one because it's keeping the reader interested in this completely new world,
Yeah,
completely new characters. I don't think that they're gonna. I think it's only gonna get better from here.
absolutely.
So I'm like,
The
as a
foundation is
standalone,
set.
yeah, the foundation has been set, and I'm interested to continue reading. It's one of those things where I'm like, as it stands, like on its own, I probably would have given it a 7, but because I think it's only going to get better, I'm interested in following the character's journey. I would be more leaning more towards an 8 as well.
I think that's reasonable. Again, the foundation is set up really nicely um, to be a really good story.
And I
Um,
for independence also, the first volume to judge it solely on the storyline of the first volume versus what you expect it to be
Agreed.
isn't necessarily realistic because they're creating something that you have never heard of before.
Right.
Whereas with Batman, you have a rudimentary knowledge of who Batman is.
Yep. And that's part of why I really wanted to make sure that we did shine some light in this show on independence.
Mhm.
Because the way that an independent has to work in a story and be interesting, it's a little more difficult for I think those writers and artists to keep people interested. And I think it's important to shine that spotlight on those creators um, because they are trying. We would have never had Batman without creators doing, you
New
know,
material.
exactly. Um, and I feel like Rat Queens has potential. I would watch a show,
Yeah, me too.
or a movie or an
Or one of
animated
the DC
series.
movies.
Yeah,
That has to be like DC grade animated movie
yeah. Um, I mean, I would watch a live action like Netflix series of this.
instead of Umbrella Academy.
The Netflix series for Umbrella Academy was good. It was just the comic I didn't enjoy.
But this was really interesting and would be really interesting in any medium.
Yes.
It's also one of those things where this might be just me viewing it art wise. I get really excited to look at those really cool figurines that people sell in the comic book shops or online, or like independent sculptors and things of characters,
Yeah,
because I think they can look so cool, and I think that this one would look awesome.
I agree. There's a lot that they could do with this. It's definitely marketable.
Hmm.
Um,
And the Rat Queen logo is awesome.
it is.
With a little hat. Oh, heart, not hat, with the little heart and the rat cut out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my turn for art.
Your turn for art.
Okay, so overall, I loved the character design. I thought the scenery that they did was also really awesome. Aside from the first two-ish volumes on having that like unfinished look to me, at least, in a handful of panels, I enjoyed the play on distance and focal points and things like that. I thought that was extremely well done. Thought the attention to detail aside from those panels was spectacular. I love all of the tattoos on Hannah, and even that one like merchant dude or whatever. The assassins' designs were really, really cool and
So good.
unified while being completely different characters
Mm-hmm.
in their own regards. Own regard, not plural, but yeah. So I would give it an I would give it an 8
Okay.
for art. Just because there also weren't any standalone, like stand apart, jaw dropping, absolutely amazing moments in it art wise.
Uh-huh.
But that's also to say art on its own wise, because those moments with like the eye change and things like that artistically were beautiful because of its relation to the story.
Because of the emotion that went behind it and
Yeah, and the action that fueled it and all of that stuff. So I mean, the art as a standalone aspect, I would probably give it an 8.
gotcha. Um, so as something that I do now as a way to make sure that I'm not speaking ill of the dead, the artist for the first bit of Rat Queens was actually arrested for abusing his wife. So the artist changes in 2016, which this book was released in 2014. Um, so it'll be it, I kind of want to look at when they get the new artist
Mm-hmm.
in and kind of see what how they do their take on it.
Yeah.
Because this is definitely something I would love to see like fan art of and see other people's depictions of this. I'd love to see some cosplay of it.
I would love to see some cosplay of it. This is also one of those ones where just because of who the characters are and like the character, I guess, sheet. I mean, you know how you gave me that like character sheet to fill out for the D&D
Right.
that you have here. Any art style could really do it
Yeah.
amazing.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so it changes to another artist in 2016, and then Curtis Wiebe and Gianni, I think, was the artist that took over. Um, Finished up in March of 2019, and a new creative team picked it up in June. So there's at least three different art styles, and two different storytelling styles. So I
Oh,
definitely
that's
want to
interesting.
get into it a little more and see what it's
That'll be
like.
interesting. I hope like the storyteller changing doesn't mess anything up.
Well, I mean, they do it all the time in other comics, so I don't see that.
I know in other comics, but I mean, again, you have that baseline that is also well known.
Yeah, but this is
So,
Curtis doing the story for 5 years. I think you can develop that baseline for a new storyteller to come in and still be able to do the story similar justice.
yeah,
To where
it's
a
true.
new take on it after 5 years could be
It's probably
refreshing.
nice.
Yeah. Um, for me, art, I I really enjoyed a lot of the scenes. Like I said, that I think that the action in and of itself um, was pretty close to being some of the best that I've seen in a while, and
Mhm.
that really upped the score for me. Um, like I think I would give after you seeing you kind of point out the inconsistencies in the backgrounds a bit, like with just random characters in the background. I
Yeah.
think I would give overall art a 9 out of 10.
Okay.
But it was still really really cool to see, and again the character designs were just so cool, and it didn't stop at being cool character designs of just the rat queens. They took their time on the Daves, they took their time on the captain of the guard, and the
Even just
assassins, the
the City in Darkness or whatever, those
yeah,
characters were beautifully designed. They
yep,
just, were short lived.
exactly. Um, and that's something I have to commend them for. Um, so that's 9 out of 10 for me.
Yeah.
Um, but
I will say my
overall,
oh, okay, you go.
no, 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 you.
I was gonna say I will say my overall isn't gonna be an 8. It's gonna be a 9, but that's mostly because when I was judging the story and I was judging the art, I was judging them completely separate from each other.
Hmm.
And I think that when you have them layered in the way that it is, they only help each other, and it was done really beautifully overall as a story.
It
And
complemented each other incredibly well,
yeah,
and I'm in the same boat. I do give it a 9 out of 10. Also,
same.
solid.
I'm doing good this month.
Yeah, you definitely are. Um, I definitely have a lot to um make sure that I do well with on the manga for the month.
Which is
A Silent Voice is our manga. Again, volume one. I don't know how many volumes of A Silent Voice there are. I think there's only like four. But we are just doing the first volume. Um, and
and then if we're lucky, we can convince Ben to watch the movie and film some reactions.
yeah, I mean that's less if you're lucky in convincing me, more of if you're lucky and my daughter gives me the time to do so.
Valid.
Because
Especially since you promised me that we'd watch Fruits Basket.
yep. And I found Fruits Basket on Funimation.
I bought Hulu.
Oh, okay. You bought all of Hulu.
All of Hulu.
All right. Anna's the new owner of Hulu, guys. Um, well, solid pick, Anna. And again, I loved all of the D&D stuff. If there are more comic books like this out there that are a heavy D&D style, I want to know about them. So send those recommendations our way because hell yeah, I definitely want to see more. Um, Anna, where can people find you on the internet?
Instagram. I have 2 accounts. One that is my like personal, mostly my dog, and most recently, like, the little alerts for this, which is Anna_Riddick. And then I have a professional art account that I might or might not get better at posting to, which is Anna, or not Anna, sorry, which is A Riddick Designs. Uh, A
Favorite
Riddick underscore
underscore
designs.
designs?
Sorry. And then I have a Twitter that I never use because my brother told me that I should get one, so I got one, but I don't go on it, which is A Riddick
Designs.
Designs with no underscore because he made fun of me.
Yeah, good. Still do.
Go ahead. Where can they find you, Ben?
You can find me on the internet pretty much everywhere. It's Ben Pie, ITSBENPAI, on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. I do have an Instagram where I post solely my photography work, and that's just Ben Pie Photo. But really, where you can make sure that you find everything related to Ben Pie and Anakin is riddickdesigns.com or it's benpie.com. Both websites take you to the same place. So yeah, it's that's how you can find us on the internet. Next next week is a silent voice manga.
What's with the robot voice?
That's all we got for this week, everybody.
Okay. Shalom-Aste!
Shalom-Aste.
That was my
Oh,
face.
you dork. 5620.